Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. Nana Shastra Vichanika Nipanau Saddharma Sansthapakou Lokanam Hitkarinau Tribhuvane Manyau Sharanyakarau Radha Krishna Padarvinda Bhajna Nandena Mattalikau Vande Rupa Sanatanau Raghuyugau Shri Jiva Gopalakau. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, namely Shri Rupa Goswami, Shri Sanatan Goswami, Shri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Shri Raghunath Das Goswami, Shri Jiva Goswami, and Shri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus they are honored all over the three worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mode of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. So we are talking about these 11 verses of Nectar of Instructions, which take us from Shraddha to the Bhava and Prema. So text 1 to 3, we'll understand about controlling the mind and senses. Then the 6 things unfavorable for Krishna consciousness, 6 things favorable for Krishna consciousness. The shlokas 4 to 6 make us understand the loving exchanges between devotees, how to deal with different types of devotees, and the don'ts in the dealings with the devotees. Text 7 about Bhajan Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, Nishtha and Ruchi is going to help us understand the glories of the holy name. Text 8 will make us understand the meditation on Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes so that there is asakti. And the last 3 shlokas, which make us understand about Bhava Prema, that is residence in Radha Krishna and its glories. So this is a journey from Shraddha, Sadhu Sang, Bhajan Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, Nishtha, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava, and finally Prema. So we saw the shloka number 1, Vacho Vegam Manasaha, Krodha Vegam, Jivva Vegam, Uda Rupostha Vegam, Etan Vegam Anyaha, Visha Etadhiraha, Sarvam Apimam Prithivim Sa Shishyata. A sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. We started off with the explanation of Maharaj Parikshit on atonement. We saw the analogies, the elephant and the bath, the thief and the police, the confessions being done on weekly basis. Then we understood what is real attainment, which is awakening the dormant Krishna consciousness. So it is basically training according to the regulative principles and methodical life. So there we understood about the traditional tapasya, the celibacy, austerity, truthfulness, renunciation, yogasanas, cleanliness, mind and sense control. And we also understood about the Pancharatrik tapasya, or the Rupa Goswami's method, wherein we are recommended about practicing bhakti under Guru guidance in association of devotees and avoiding activities, which is the 4 regulative principles. The first one must control is the speaking power, because the problem is any opportunity we begin to speak nonsense. And there we saw the analogy of nonsensical talk like toad attracting the snake or that, and practically the materialistic make and the impersonal Mayavadi philosophies. The improper solution also we saw about Mauna, or the self-imposed silence, because it appears helpful for some time, but ultimately it proves to be a failure. And the proper solution is Krishna Katha, that is engaging the speaking process and glorifying the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. And that is why preachers of Krishna Katha are beyond the clutches of death. Then we saw about the second urge, that is the explanation given by the Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So even our karma kanda, that is activities engaging in fruitive activities, or materialistic people who simply want to enjoy life without restriction, they were all examples of this urge of vacho vegam. So how this urge is exhibited is in the form of useless talk and volumes of useless books. And the counteraction of this tendency is diverting our talking to the subject of Krishna or Krishna Katha. So we discussed about devotional service and the subject of realizing Krishna, and then the scriptural references to explain this point, which came in the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 5th chapter, Shloka number 10 and 11, wherein we understood the comparison between mundane literature and transcendental literature, and how mundane literature are considered as the pilgrimage for the crows. So the conclusion is that only when we talk about devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead can we refrain from useless, nonsensical talk. We should always endeavor to use our speaking power solely for the purpose of realizing Krishna consciousness. For Manasaha Vegam, we saw the problem is restlessness or fickleness, and that we cannot negate thoughts and create vacuum because idle mind attracts anarthas. So the solution is to meditate on the lotus feet of Krishna, and the reference we saw was of Krishna is light and Maya is darkness, which comes from Krishna, from Chaitanya Charitamrit Madhya Leela. Krishna Surya Sama Maya Haya Andhakara Yaha Krishna Taha Nahi Maya Adhikara. So Krishna is just like the sun and Maya is just like darkness. If the sun is present, there is no question of darkness. Similarly, if Krishna is present in the mind, there is no possibility of the minds being agitated by Maya's influence. So there are two types according to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Avirodh Priti and Virodh Yukta Krodha. So Avirodh Priti is unrestricted attachment to philosophy of Mayavadis, belief in future activities of Karmavadis, or belief in plans based on materialistic desires. And Virodh Yukta Krodha or anger arising from frustration because of unfulfilled desires. So whoever make this plan, they attract the attention of conditioned souls. But when they cannot fulfill their plans and when the devices are frustrated, they become angry. So frustration of material desires produces anger. So anger or krodha vegam. The problem is it cannot be stopped altogether. But the solution is to apply it rightly to the blasphemous. So we saw the three examples regarding it. About Lord Chaitanya Prabhu showing anger towards Jagai Madhai because they blasphemed and struck Nityananda Prabhu. Or Hanumanji burning the whole of Lanka. Or Arjuna fighting the war in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Then we saw about Jihva Vegam, the tongue, because the problem is to eat palatable dishes in restaurants and sweetmeat shops, unoffered food, eating at unscheduled times. And there are 6 kinds of urges of tongue, according to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Tamo, Rajo, Sattva, Mahatamo, Prasāda, an invitation to a rich man's place. After that, we saw how and where is the solution for this Jihva Vega. Solution is controlling the urge by supplying only prasāda. To eat when Krishna arranges for prasāda. To eat at scheduled times. To avoiding eating in any restaurants or sweetmeat shops because it's like simply supplying the whims of the tongue or whim. And if we stick to the principle of taking only prasāda, the urges of belly and tongue can be controlled. So there are scriptural injunctions about this Jihva Vegam, like our prasadam prayers, Sharira Vidya Jal Janendriyata Hai Kal Jive Fele Vishaya Sagare Tara Madhe Jivati Tara Madhe Jivati. So amongst all that, Jiva is the one which is most troublesome. Or even in Antelila we have it, Jivara Lalasa Ye. And then Bhalana Kaibe Ara Bhalana Paribe. So many scriptural injunctions we saw. So what we have to eat is only remnants of food offered to Krishna. And then it becomes possible for us to get saved from Maya's victimization. What is recommended is Patram Pushpam Phalam Toya. Nothing else is required. So that is what we take. But then if we take it too much, just because it is tasty, then also it is like trying to satisfy the demands of the tongue and it is not recommended. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught us to avoid very palatable dishes even while taking prasāda. So that also we have to remember. So that's a summary which we had. So Vacho Vegam. So problem is Karmis and Danik, snake and toad, or the solution is Krishna Katha. Manasa Vegam, we saw it attracts anarthas. Problem is vacuum. And solution is meditating on the lotus feet of Krishna. Krodha, problem is it cannot be stopped. The solution is apply against blasphemers. Then Jivva, we saw problem is forced to eat in karmi shops. Solution is prasāda. We have to be grateful for when Krishna supplies and accept it as mercy, and we have to eat it at scheduled times only. And Udarapastha, no unnecessary sex, Krishna consciousness. So this is where we start our discussions today. Om Agyantimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamlam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscham Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsham Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So Vacho Vegam Manastha Krodha Vegam Jivha Vegam Udarapastha Vegam Etan Vegam Anyu Vishaheta Dhiraha Sarvam Apimam Prithvim Sashishya. So we have completed understanding, we have completed application, we have seen the purpose of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and today is to understand the theme or the conclusion. So let us come to the last Vega, the Vega which we have missed, that is body, the demands of the body. Now, if you see the tongue, the belly, and the genitals, they are all in one straight line at the center of the body. And they are the ones which are the cause for the demands of the body. And that is why the demands of the body are divided into three types. The demands of the tongue, the stomach or the belly, and the genitals. Now it is said that if you are able to control the tongue by prasāda, then the other two are automatically controlled. Because the whole journey, the whole problem starts with your tongue. If you can restrain the demands of the tongue by limiting the activities, allowing it only to eat prasāda, then all the other urges are automatically controlled. Because it is not at all a problem there. Because if you look at Uttarapastha Vegam that we are talking about, Uttaraha, the problem is it's the stomach disease. It wants to have it filled all the time. It's a disease. The solution which is recommended for that is to observe fasting days like Ekädasi, Janmästami, Ramnavami, which is coming now, Thursday, to restrain the demands of the day. So automatically, you start controlling it. And once it gets controlled, then the other bodily problems also get resolved. Regarding, Srila Prabhupada says, regarding the urges of the pastha, the problem is, according to him, there is unnecessarily. The persons today, they're completely driven by mentality, of keeping themselves always busy in intimacy. And the whole culture, all your advertisements, movies, dramas, everything rotated around intimacy. Well, it is an unnecessary involvement. And that is a problem according to Srila Prabhupada. But then Srila Prabhupada also gives the solution. He, in fact, reached America at a time when the hippie movement was at its peak. When those people were not involved in any kind of restraint, they had unrestrained activities. Whatever they wanted to do, wherever they wanted to do, they used to do. And among such atmosphere, just with kirtan and Kṛṣṇa prasāda, Prabhupada converted these hippies into happies. And he gave the solution to the urges of genitals. The solution is to use it only to beget Krishna conscious children. Otherwise, it should not be used. And that is why you will find that the Krishna Bhavanamrut or the Krishna consciousness movement encourages marriage, not for the satisfaction of genitals, but for begetting Krishna consciousness. So that is something which we have to remember. Now, when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was talking about this Vega, he was talking about two types. One, legal or proper. That is, marry according to Shastras and we get Krishna consciousness. The second was illegal or improper, for which there are 5 categories. So even thinking of intimacy is improper. Planning also is improper. Talking about it is also improper. Actually, definitely is improper. And trying to have it satisfied by artificial means, that also is improper. Because by all these 5 things, what you are doing is you are getting caught in the clutches of this. Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur explained even what would come in future indirectly by this explanation. So it is very, very simple that you have to avoid, you have to start controlling your Udarapastha Vega. So that is why regulated activities is very, very important. So that is how we complete the application part. So we have seen how to control the Vacha, the Manasaha Vegam, the Krodha Vegam, Jivha Vegam, as well as the Udarapastha Vegam, by not indulging in unnecessary intimacy, having it only with the objective for Krishna conscious kids. And that is where also the next part of the purport comes in, which is about the instructions to those in the renounced order of life. This comes basically in the Prema Vaivarta book, 7th chapter, written by Sri Jagadananda Pandit. Vairagi bhai gramya katha na suni bekane, gramya varta na kahi be ya be mile beane. Swapne ona kar bhai stri sambhashana, rahe stri chadiya bhai ashtiya chavan. याडी छाया प्रणय राखीते गौरांगे रसने, छोटा हरिदासेर कथा ठाके ये न माने. भाला न खाइबे आर भाला न परिबे, हृदय ते राधा कृष्ण सर्वदा सेविबे. My dear brother, you are in the renounced order of life and should not listen to talk about ordinary worldly things. Nor should you talk about worldly things when you meet with others. वैरागी भाई ग्राम्य कथा ना सुनिबे काने, ग्राम्य वार्ता ना कहिबे याबे मिले बे आने. In the second line, do not think of women even in dreams. You have accepted the renounced order of life with a vow that forbids you to associate with women. स्वप्ने ओना कार भाई स्त्री संभाषण ग्रहे श्री छाड़िया भाई आशिया चवन. And then it further says, if you wish to associate with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you must always remember the incidents of Chota Haridas and how he was rejected by the Lord. Yadi chaha pranaya rakhite gaurange rasane Chota Haridase rakata thake namane. And then the ultimate, the most important line. Do not eat luxurious dishes or dress in fine garments, but always remain humble and serve their lordship Shri Radha Krishna in your heart of hearts. Bhala na khaibe ar bhala na paribe hridayate Radha Krishna sarvada sevibe. Very important discussion which comes from this particular shloka. Let us stop discussing about worldly things. We should avoid listening also and speaking also when we meet anyone. But the tongue cannot remain silent. And so what can be done is, if we meet anyone, talk about Krishna. Talk about Krishna Lila. Talk about the beauty of Krishna. Talk about the various empowerments of Krishna. To avoid thinking about women even in dreams. Because when you use the word women, it is either sex, either gender. Because that is the cause for a downfall for almost everyone. So if you want to be an associate with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you have to remember what happened with Chota Haridas. So the story goes that once there was an opulent kirtan going on. Chota Haridas was also a party to the kirtan. He was very, very good. But one day, when some females were there, he looked at them and he felt a lust. At the end of the kirtan, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu understood it and he said, please throw this Chota Haridas away. He was removed. He tried a lot to regain the entry, but Chaitanya Prabhu never permitted him back again. Just a look, and this was the punishment. And that is why we should avoid swapne ona kara bhai stri sambhashana. And we have to remain simple. We have to be a servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord. So why do we need opulent dishes? Why do we need opulent dresses? That is why bhala na khaibe ar bhala na pehne. Because the ultimate objective is that hridayate Radha Krishna sarvada sevi. That is our objective of life. Be simple, be straightforward, follow the 4 regulative principles, chant, and be happy. So the instructions to those in the renounced order of life are very clear. They should not listen to or talk about ordinary worldly things. They should not talk about worldly things when we meet others. Do not think of women even in dreams. Not eat luxurious dishes or dress in fine garments. Always remain humble and serve the lordships in the heart of peace. And that is where the last discussion comes in this particular purport about Godas and Goswamis. So Godas is a servant of the senses and Goswami is the master of the sentence. So this first shloka is basically asking us to give up the service of the senses and instead to serve the Supreme Lord. The conclusion is very simple, that one who can control these 6 senses, speech, mind, anger, tongue, belly, and genitals, he can be called a Swami or a Goswami. So Swami means master, and Goswami means master of the goes or the senses. And so when one accepts the renounced order of life, he automatically assumes the title of Swami. It does not mean that he is master of his family, community, or society. He is a master of his senses. Because unless he is a master of senses, he cannot be called Goswami. He would actually be a Godasa, servant of the senses. And that is what we see most of the time now. The so-called Mayavadi preachers, philosophers, those who take names, commit mistakes on the name, strength of the holy name, create big ashramas, and indulge in all activities which are actually forbidden. Buy islands and call themselves as nations. They are all Bodhasas because they are servants to their senses. Following in the footsteps of the 6 Goswamis, ideally, all Swamis, Goswamis, they should fully engage in transcendental loving service of the Lord. Because if you are servant of the senses, then we cannot become servant of Krishna. Because a Godas is always engaged in the service of the senses, or maybe in the service of the material world. They have no other engagement and they have no time for any other engagement. That is why Prahlad Maharaj has described the Godasas as Adantago, which refers to one whose senses are not controlled. So what Prahlad Maharaj says in the 7th canto, 5th chapter is Matirna Krishne Paratha Swatahava Mitha Abhipadayet Gruha Vratana Adanta Gobhir Vishatam Tamishram Punah Punascha Charvita Charvanana. For those who have decided to continue their existence in this material world for the gratification of their senses, there is no chance of becoming Krishna conscious. Not by personal endeavor, by instruction from others, or by joint conferences. They are dragged by the unbridled senses into the darkest region of ignorance, and thus they madly engage in what is called chewing the chew. So what Prahlad Maharaj is saying here is that because of their uncontrolled senses, persons too addicted to materialistic life make progress towards hellish conditions. Matihina Krishna Parataha Swatahava Mitha Abhipadayet Grahavratana. And repeatedly chew that which has already been chewed. Punah Punah Charvita Charvanana. Their inclinations toward Krishna are never aroused, either by instructions of others, by their own efforts, or by a combination of them. So this Punah Punah Charvita Charvanana is the important. That is something which we have to control very, very rigorously. And that is the actual, what I will say, takeaway of this first shloka of Nectar of Instructions. So let us summarize the whole first shloka again properly. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. So we have seen the kinds of urges. They are regarding speech, mind, and body. So regarding speech, we have seen the problem is like prajalpa, or the karmis and gyanis who keep on talking. And the solution is Harikatha. Then regarding the urges of mind, we saw the 2 types, avirodh priti, unrestricted attachments, and virodh yukta krodha, or anger due to frustration. And the solution was that we have to meditate on the lotus feet of Krishna. So regarding body, we saw the urges. They are connected in straight line, starting with tongue, belly, and genitals. So tongue, we have seen the examples of the prasāda prayers and the Chaitanya Charitamrita references. So they had 6 types of demands. The tamo, that is dead bodies, rajaha, spicy, sattva, milk and grains, mahatamaha, intoxicants, prasāda, offering delicious food, and prasāda, visiting for food. So the solution we saw was that we should only eat prasāda when available, when given by Kṛṣṇa, and in limited quantity at scheduled times only. Regarding belly, stomach of disease, solution is that we should keep fasts on the nominated days. Genitals, illegal 5 types we have seen: thinking, planning, talking, doing, and artificial means. The legal, marriage, and Kṛṣṇa conscious kids. So that is how we have finished this particular shloka. And that is where the most important discussions of this particular shloka come into. So the conclusion, if I have to make of this particular theme, is we can serve only one master at a time. So either senses or Kṛṣṇa, choice is ours. If we serve senses, then we will be Godas or Adanta Go, that is servant of senses. And if we serve Kṛṣṇa, then we can become Goswami, or the controller of the senses, and will be qualified as spiritual masters. So Kṛṣṇa consciousness is the best solution to control the 6 urges, and that is what we have to work upon and develop sincerely and regularly. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhaya vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo